Hello, my name is Dr. Brian. Today I want to give you some background information on the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccines. Since COVID-19 vaccines are new, some people have asked about their effects on those who take them. Short-term side effects are those that happen within a few days after a vaccine has been given, are readily apparent. This is because of clinical trial reports and personal experiences, but people also wonder about the possible long-term effects of these vaccines. To answer this question, scientists study the available evidence, and while the rules of science do not allow scientists to say that long-term effects can never happen, the vaccine producers indicate that evidence is strong that these vaccines will not cause any long-term harm. This reasoning comes from the history of vaccines, which shows that delayed effects following vaccination can occur. But when they do, these effects tend to happen within 2 months of vaccination. For example, in the case of the oral polio vaccine, about 1 in 2.4 million recipients of the oral polio vaccine, which is no longer used in the U.S., were paralyzed following vaccination when the vaccine virus reverted to wild-type poliovirus. This happened when genetic changes to weaken the virus in the lab were lost during viral replication in the vaccine recipient. Paralysis occurred about 7 to 30 days after vaccination. Because vaccine recipients shed the virus in their stools, on occasion, contacts of these people would be paralyzed when they were infected, and the genetic reversion occurred in them. This secondary event could happen up to 60 days after the first person was vaccinated because it took time for the virus to spread to the next person. Another case involved the yellow fever vaccine. This vaccine is not routinely recommended in the U.S., but it is required for travel to certain countries. 2 delayed negative effects have been detected after receipt of this vaccine. The first effect involves the nervous system. This effect causes swelling of the brain or spinal cord. It occurred most often when infants younger than 6 months of age received this vaccine, which is why this group is not recommended to get the vaccine. It can also happen, albeit less frequently, in those older than 6 months of age who receive the vaccine. When this happens, the average time between receipt of the vaccine and symptom onset is 2 weeks, with the range of up to 3 weeks. A second negative effect is the occurrence of visceratropic disease. This condition is characterized by multisystem organ failure. Yellow fever infection can also cause multisystem organ failure. This adverse event happens so infrequently that it was not described until the early 2000s. In this situation, the vaccine virus replicates and spreads throughout the body. The onset occurs less than 1 week after vaccination, most often, occurring about 3 days after receipt of the vaccine. The third case we are discussing is the influenza vaccine. 2 severe adverse events associated with the influenza vaccine are also instructive. The first occurred in 1976 when the swine influenza vaccine was identified as a rare cause of Guillain-Barré syndrome, an ascending paralysis that can involve the muscles of breathing. However, subsequent studies have not found flu vaccines to be a cause of Guillain-Barré. In contrast, influenza infection is also a cause of Guillain-Barré. Guillain-Barré occurs 17 times more frequently after natural infection than vaccination. Almost all cases following vaccination occurred in the 8 weeks after receipt of the vaccine. In 2009, during the H1N1 pandemic, one influenza vaccine used in Finland was found to cause narcolepsy in about 1 in 55,000 vaccine recipients. Narcolepsy is a sleep disorder characterized by excessive fatigue and periods of sleep throughout the day. Despite various influenza vaccines used during the pandemic, only one caused this issue, which was believed to have resulted from the way that particular vaccine was made. The average onset of symptoms occurred within 7 weeks of vaccination.
In the case of the MMR vaccine, about 1 of 30,000 recipients of measles, mumps and rubella or MMR vaccine can experience a temporary decrease in platelets. This is a condition called thrombocytopenia. Platelets are the cells responsible for clotting of blood. Both measles and mumps infections can cause thrombocytopenia. This condition is most often found between 1 and 3 weeks after vaccination, but in a few cases, it occurred up to 8 weeks after vaccination. In another example, replication defective adenovirus vectored COVID vaccines. In February 2021, the Food and Drug Administration licensed a replication-defective human adenovirus type 26 vaccine made by Johnson & Johnson for the prevention of COVID-19 following a Phase 3 study of 44,000 people that showed the vaccine was safe and effective. After about 7 million doses of the vaccine were administered, the vaccine was found to be a rare cause of cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, a blood clot in a vein that drains blood from the brain. It occurred in about 1 per million people vaccinated. The mechanism by which this rare blood clot occurred was based on activation of a protein made by platelets, called platelet factor 4. A similar problem was found after inoculation of 20 million people in the United Kingdom and Europe with a similar vaccine made by AstraZeneca that used a replication-defective simian adenovirus vector. This event occurred within 3 weeks of vaccination. These experiences demonstrate two important findings. First, when these events occurred, the onset was within 8 weeks of receipt of the vaccine. Second, in all of these cases, except narcolepsy following H1N1 vaccine, the side effect of the vaccine was something that could be caused by the infection, meaning that getting infected with the virus also carried a risk of experiencing these outcomes. In the narcolepsy experience, the cause was determined to be related to the adjuvant used in that preparation of vaccine. Regardless, this history humbles vaccine scientists. They know that they hold people's lives in their hands. For this reason, scientists and public health officials normally carefully analyze and continually monitor the data related to every vaccine before, during and after it becomes available. Even with this history in mind, some reasonably wonder about the COVID-19 vaccines because they have not previously been approved for use in people. But here, too, we can be confident in what we know. For example, in the case of the mRNA vaccine, we know that although COVID-19 mRNA vaccines are new, this type of vaccine has been studied in people before. mRNA vaccines against HIV, rabies, Zika and flu have been tested in Phase 1 and Phase 2 trials in people. The technology has also been used in clinical trials as a way to treat some cancers. Even though these products have not been licensed for use in people, these efforts provided important information about mRNA technology and its safety. mRNA is made and used in protein production in all cells of our bodies. As such, cells have mechanisms in place to ensure that no protein is made in quantities greater than needed. One way this happens is that mRNA has a poly-A tail. In the cytoplasm, this tail ensures mRNA decay. As the mRNA is used to make proteins in the cell, the length of the poly-A tail decreases, until it is too short for the mRNA to continue being used as a protein blueprint. Once this happens, the mRNA breaks down and is removed as cellular debris. This process limits how long mRNA remains in the cytoplasm and, therefore, how much protein is. As such, poly-A tails ensure that the cell breaks down the vaccine mRNA in a timely manner. Likewise, this understanding allows scientists to design vaccine-delivered mRNA in a way that ensures it does not stay in the cell longer than needed to generate immunity. What about the adenovirus-based vaccine? Although COVID-19 adenovirus vaccines are new, this type of vaccine has been studied in people before, and another adenovirus-based vaccine was approved for use in Europe in those 1 year of age and older starting in the summer of 2020. That vaccine is one of 2 doses of an Ebola vaccine, and it uses the same type of adenovirus as the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Adenovirus-based vaccines deliver DNA to the nucleus of the cell, which is used to make mRNA that serves as a blueprint for making the protein. DNA is more stable and lasts longer than mRNA, which is evidenced by strengthening of the immune response for 1 to 2 months after vaccination. However, studies of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine have shown that if people get a second dose 6 weeks after the first dose, they have lower immune responses than if they get the second dose 12 weeks after the first dose. Because the second dose generates memory responses, it is better to administer after the primary immune response is fully developed. As such, the improved responses after 12 weeks instead of 6 weeks suggests that the vaccine is done being processed between 6 and 12 weeks after a dose is given. This timing agrees with studies in mice, which suggested that protein was no longer being produced 3 weeks after inoculation, but that specialized cells of the immune system, called antigen-presenting cells, containing pieces of protein from the antigen, could be found in lymph nodes for about 4 to 6 weeks after inoculation. Because of the knowledge gained with other vaccines, the FDA required companies making COVID-19 vaccines to follow trial participants for a minimum of 8 weeks before they could submit their data for approval. Likewise, the participants in the vaccine trials continue to be followed even though the vaccines have been approved for use. While all the real facts about the current vaccines are not available, the data that is available does cause some degree of concern and certainly is one reason that there are so many people who are hesitant to get vaccinated. Many of the naysayers of the current vaccines indicate that there are many therapeutics available if they are taken early in the disease. It is a mystery as to why the government and medical community do not promote these therapeutics along with the vaccines. One can only guess why this is the case. We certainly hear many success stories of people who take certain therapeutics early on and recovery very quickly. With the huge push to get vaccinated being orchestrated by the government and the media, it causes one to wonder why getting vaccinated is so important. Is this just a matter of the government wanting to exert control over the populace, or is there something in the vaccine that they want everyone to have? Whatever the case, anyone wishing to get vaccinated should think long and hard over getting the shot. I recommend the shot as the last resort. It is far better that each person have on hand therapeutics that have been shown to work. Go to NehemiahReset.org to get more information on how the COVID-19 crisis is being used to curb our freedoms and why so many of our politicians are using it to exert control over us. I urge all of you to be very cautious about getting the shot and push back on the government who is mandating the vaccine as a condition for anyone who wants to work. If we don't stand up on this issue, who knows what our government will try to push the next time. I also ask that you pray for our government, business leaders and others who are in a position to exert control over us, that God will restrain their use of coercion during these troubling times.